So real excited to have him actually coming in studio. Then at 8:30, we've got Senator Angela Paxton, who will be live from Austin doing the Senate minutes. So, whew, I'm already tired. Where's my coffee? Well, we wanted, Dr. Goode and I were talking before the show, and, Dr. Goode's part of the crew. She has her show that plays on our network every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. A fantastic show. If you want to learn how to advocate for your child's education or for yourself as a teacher, or if you're a kid who's one of those go-getting kids, in high school who is already standing up for themselves and their education, this is her show is your show. So, but before that, there's been a tragedy, another mass shooting, and this is just heartbreaking. An individual shot and killed 10 people, including the first police officer on the scene in Denver, Colorado. And we just are asking the crew to please come together and pray for these families who have lost loved ones. Such a tragedy, and Dr. Goode, I think you've probably read, like I have, we don't know if this, some family members are saying nice, quiet individual. Some family members are saying mentally ill and deranged. There have been reports that he was on the radar of the FBI, which greatly, and again, this is speculation at this point. They're trying to find out all the facts, but that's of great concern. And if there is if he was flagged in some way because of his association with another individual, why was he able to get a gun? So there's just a lot of questions. A number of people have come forward and said that that he possibly was bullied while he was in school. And I know you're a zero tolerance bullying person, very much so. And you take it a step further, Dr. Goode. You get to the root of, well, okay, then first of all, there's zero tolerance for bullying, but then why did that individual bully? And is there a mental health component that we need to look at? And so as we ask the crew to pray, I'm going to go and transition the conversation over to Dr. Goode, because so much, if we ignore, obviously, kids have to learn how to read, write, and arithmetic and all that kind of good stuff, and how to problem solve, and, how to be part of, this community that is worldwide now because of the internet. But if you are not taking care of mental health issues at your school, you're missing the boat.
Well, and I hate to bring up Plano ISD, but I think that sort of is a good example is a relevant example to say what happens when you don't take care of things at the school level. When you ignore things, when you give things a pass, in essence, kids are no dummies, folks. And your bullies are some of your smarter kids as far as the
very, very much. Yes.
Of their approach, right? And so when kids see adults are not only not paying attention, but choosing to ignore what to some would be obvious behavior, then it reinforces that unconscious bias that many educators are being blamed for. Matter of fact, I read it again in the newspaper article from yesterday where Dr. Hinojosa was talking about doing away with in-house and out-of-school suspension.
And this is so. Explain who Dr. Hinojosa is and why this is big headlines.
All of this is connected. If you give me a minute, I'll connect all the pieces.
Yes.
But Dr. Hinojosa is the longtime superintendent of Dallas ISD, the fourth largest district in Texas, and he has been given a letter by 16 different organizations that really represent kids of color, and his district, just like mine, represents mostly kids of color.
Right.
And
right.
What they're finding through many years, really, frankly, many years of study, is that kids of color are suspended more than kids of white kids.
Right.
And so, and kids are overrepresented of color in special ed, same thing. And so, you bring this back to bullying in the schools. If the schools do not pay attention to the social emotional piece of their kids, if they're only focused on academics, then they ignore those emotional pieces and opportunities to get the value system straight in kids.
Okay?
Right. unfortunately, we can't count on families to do that for us. We just can't. We've tried that, and we've learned that some families are in survival mode. They are trying to work too many jobs to try to make it through.
Especially now, Dr. Good. I mean, let's think about during the
Yes.
pandemic. You've got, you've got issues where kids have had to go to work because their parents have lost their job, or now their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs to make up for the loss of income from the one job. So let's face it. You've got
Things
parents who
are
are
a mess.
possibly gone the little bit of time their kids at home.
And so again, the school is the only constant in a child's life, whether it's with food issues, with social emotional issues, just with being that face that they can count on, that they think and loves them, right?
Right.
And so when you say you have a guy here that possibly was bullied, if that was the case, again, we have, much like Columbine, that case of inner rage that was never caught.
Right.
And dealt with the school level, at the employee level, at the family level, and here's how it erupted. If that turns out, but again, our media is such a mess. And Kathy, I've read some headlines that he could be Muslim, he could be a terrorist, he could be this, he could be that, and it's like you have to really be careful and if you're gonna read something, you have to almost overread it in different sources so you can pick up a pattern of what might be true.
You do. And that's why, we preface a conversation like this with, there is a possibility that, because you can't say anything definitive at this point. I've also heard, and again, I don't like to make things like this political unless it's proven that there was a political motivation behind it. One of the speculations out there is that he was very anti-President Trump. So again, but who knows, because you've got mixed messages possibly coming from the families, or is that just the media grabbing a hold of the first person they could get? And maybe it's a family member who is a distant, relative that they haven't seen in 25 years. You don't know.
Right. And then I saw something that this is the 7th shooting in 7 days. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't heard of 7 shootings.
Is it?
And so, yeah, I read that and I thought, well, maybe some previous days, I know the media had at one time said they weren't going to give them the notoriety, right?
Right.
Of every shooting. But there's a definition now for mass shootings, and if it has to fall in a different category, but or a certain category for it to be have that title applied. And so everything's confusing, Kathy.
It really is. Well, and again, that's why with the media nowadays, with all of the access out there on social media that links to something that you think, oh, I'm clicking on this link, so therefore it is a quote unquote official story from an official news site. No, it might just be linking back to somebody's podcast or somebody's vlog or blog or something like this, and it's just their personal opinion, and we don't know.
Yeah, you have to become very discerning. We have to actually teach that in the schools now about fake news versus real news, and
yes,
we have to teach that.
See, isn't that crazy? Like, that wasn't a thing when I was in school. Fake. If somebody would have said fake news, I'd have been like, "What are you talking about?" But back in the day, you had to, and this is something I learned, when I first got into radio. You basically, if you're going to come across and you're doing you're an entertainment show, then if you mention news stories, you need to specify, this is where I'm reading it from. Here's my source. Kind of like, back in the day when you did a report, you've got your bibliography. Here's where I got my sources from. And it's crazy how nowadays you've got to teach kids, don't believe everything you read right away.
Right. Yeah. So to tie everything back, I mean, what happens between the school and families impacts kids in a positive or a negative way. If indeed he was bullied and it wasn't caught in the schools and it wasn't caught in other ways, whether it's because of poor performance at work, it does manifest in negative ways. Now, why he was allowed a gun, that's something we'll have to wait and see, and hope that we can get a real answer in the next few weeks. Unfortunately, again, I've learned personally to be very careful about believing automatically the early reports. I
Agree.
know about filling airtime and how we just talk to fill airtime. And a lot of times that's just um, based on very superficial evidence. So
Yes.
to go back to the Dr. Hinojosa thing, again, the unconscious bias that staff oftentimes have around kids who don't act the way we want them to act. And so because our go-to as adults tends to be to punish, I think you may have heard me talk about restorative practice. We went
And
to
I was so I was thinking restorative practice the whole way driving here, knowing you and I were going to mention the Denver shooting and restorative practice. So many times when I hear things like this, it brings me back to the first time you taught us about this on the show. So for somebody who's new to the crew, explain what that is because it's crucial.
restorative practice is a social justice sort of discipline technique, and ironically it started with in like Minnesota about 20 some odd years ago with juvenile delinquents, older juvenile delinquents. And
Okay.
what they did is they started using circles, relationship circles, to talk about why they might have done the harm that they did. And so as they learn to bring these kids together and to have them be accountable verbally to the group for the harm that they had done to whatever community, whether it was the school community, their family community, their neighborhood community, depending why they were there. And then once they were in juvenile settings, they oftentimes misbehaved there as well, right? And so over time, what they found is when kids are able to talk in a neutral setting about the harm that they've done and their part in it, and then ask forgiveness from those that they harmed, whether school or family or neighbors, then oftentimes that caused a cleansing and a maturity that lasted a lifetime. And so that has filtered down into restorative practice to, ironically enough, a lot of people say, oh, that's only used in elementary. No, it started with the older kids. And yes, it's very successful with elementary kids because they tend to absorb things faster and have a believability and a credibility of their teacher, right? A little bit faster sometimes than our more jaded secondary students. But instead of coming at a situation in a negative way like we adults want to do, we want to, if you don't stop that, I'm gonna, right? Here's the code of conduct. You're suspended. You're out of here. You're not coming back. That sort of thing. Instead of doing that, and this is one of the hardest parts for adults to do, is to look at situations and be the neutral mediator between the, let's say, oftentimes two parties. A third grade boy hit another third grade boy because the other third grade boy called him a name or took his pencil or whatever, right? And so his defense was, or his way of handling that was to hit the boy. Very normal in third grade.
Right.
And so then bring the two parties together and we ask them, there's a series of questions. What caused you to do that? Do you think that was the right way to handle it? How would you handle it if you had stopped to think about it? And as those kids go through this questioning technique, and then the boy who hit the other boy apologizes, the other boy apologizes for taking his pencil, and then guess what? They're playing together at the playground like they never had a problem. And so over time, that becomes a technique that they can use without even adult intervention, so that they can self-manage their own issues. And it's very, very successful. We've been doing it for years. Matter of fact, my wondering is, and we've not done a study on it, but our Plano campus has gone from predominantly Hispanic to predominantly African-American, and with more boys, African-American boys. And so I can't help but think, anecdotally, that we have become a safe haven for families from African-American communities because we don't automatically suspend, we don't punish, we use this technique, and we do train our teachers to understand, especially when kids come from poverty, that there is a void. Most kids that come from poverty come to school with a void, whether it's a void of neglect, whether it's a void of food desert, whether it's a void of care, it is not unusual to have kids coming to us with voids. And so training our adults to understand that you can't punish the void out of a kid. You can't, if they come with trauma based on their home environment, you can't, and then they act the fool in school for attention, because the only kind of attention they know to get is negative attention, and they're fine with that as long as somebody's paying attention to them.
Well, and you know, it's interesting. You mentioned that type of, everybody remembers that. I don't care how old you are watching this show. You know somebody who that was their gig. They didn't care that it was the teacher busting their chops or they were down at the principal's office. It was attention. And so that's one of those things. But if you identify that early, and I've run into adults who they're still even if it's negative attention, especially in politics, they still go for it. And I'm like, you know, if that's somebody who, if they would have felt like somebody gave them the time of day back when they were younger, they might have learned to be not only obviously a better, you know, student in school, you know, more assimilated, had a better experience. They would be a better citizen, a better adult, you know, somebody who can work well with others. One of the things you learn, and Dr. Goode, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, in school is how to work with others. And especially in today's society, you've got to be really good at that. And if you aren't, you're missing out on opportunities.
Well, you're right about that. We have to train our teachers and our school leadership to know how to handle angry parents. Society's angry right now.
Yes.
And they're even more angry now. And so one of the techniques that we use is to say, for example, when a parent unloads on me, and I say, you know what? Thank you. If that is happening, I needed to know that.
Right.
Now, I have a good idea that didn't happen that way, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that parent feels heard when we say that.
Oh, that's a very good point. Oh, that's really good.
Get back to them and so forth.
Yeah.
But the reassurance that a parent is feeling heard and that their emotions are being validated is a huge piece of de-escalating situations. Yep. And so, and there's a great line when you were talking previously that my African-American Dean of Instruction taught me back in 2000. I think it was 2001. And I probably said something like, I can't believe that this adult is blah, blah, blah. And she turned to me and she said, Dr. Goode, no, I wasn't that. She said, Miss Goode, that worked for them. That worked for them and has worked for them. So they continue to use that. And it's like, this was in my head. And my goodness gracious, you're absolutely right. And so now I'm able to use that line to say, you know, that behavior for that parent has worked for them in the past. They've come in, they've yelled, they've screamed, and they've gotten their way because it's worked for them. Now, it doesn't work at Legacy because we know how to de-escalate those situations,
right.
Especially what we're asking for is not reasonable. But we have to understand that many behaviors are learned behaviors that they have learned worked for them with other people in the past. And so, you know, again, all of those techniques are ones that, again, Plano ISD is now having to learn the hard way, right? They're having to put in diversity classes and courses and programs. Gosh, we've been doing that seems like forever since and you've heard me say this, my very first year at Legacy, that I started 3 schools. I was principal of 2 of them, and I saw the biggest school. That research, that the articles were true. All the who was I seeing in the principal's office more than anything? Little black boys.
Right.
And I was, this is not going to play out at my school. And so that's when I called Clarence Glover, Professor Freedom, and he's been working with us ever since, training teachers, training staff, training kids, mentoring kids, doing parent meetings, doing parent trainings, and being that culture piece. We have a cultural philosophy as a district that we've had since our second year of school, and very few districts have a cultural philosophy, but you have to go to that extent.
And nowadays, especially. So you're saying, because let's say I'm a parent. I'm very frustrated with the way things are going in my school district or on my campus. So are you saying basically because you're all about being able to advocate for yourself to make sure your kid, your school district, if you're a teacher, your campus has the right training. You're obviously, y'all's philosophy is very proactive on issues that involve race, bullying, things of that nature, discipline. So you're saying you get training right away. So what do you do if you're a school district where that philosophy is not a big thing right now? How do you make that important?
Well, and I'm happy if any school district wants to reach out to me and chat. I'm 9 years in this superintendent business now, and before that worked for Dallas ISD and Plano ISD. So I mean, I know big districts, and I did a couple of things very meaningfully, and it's paid off. And I would ask districts to sort of look at their own. One is our campus and central office leadership reflects what our kids look like. Right. We are majority minority kids, and we are majority minority leadership. And so making sure that you have leadership at the campus and central office level that reflects the communities your kids come from is a huge piece of making all the communities feel comfortable. You've heard that for years, that kids need to see other adults that look like them so that they can see themselves being a teacher, they can see themselves being a principal, they can see themselves being something. And that's why we bring adults of different communities into our schools, right?
Absolutely.
American engineers, we want them to see Hispanic lawyers, we want them to see Asian.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to be in the classroom when you had Lily Bow, who's a city councilwoman for the city of Plano. She's actually running for mayor right now, and she came in and told her story, and it was amazing to see the transformation in your students in that audience when she first walked in and started talking, and then when she told them her story about coming over from communist China, being a first-generation immigrant to America, coming over here as a young woman. It was interesting because if you would have polled those kids before and after the class, there were kids who walked out with changed minds.
Because most of the kids in that class were immigrant kids. They were kids. Even the white kid was from his grandma came from Poland.
Right.
I mean, but there was mostly kids of color in there, mostly first generation or second generation immigrants, and they're not hearing positive things about America at home and in their community. Frankly, not right now. They're not
right.
And so having Lily Bow come in and talk about communist China and what they endured. Sort of put a different light. I mean, I saw, you've seen this, some internet thing about only in America do you have kids with $100 sneakers and a $1,000 cell phone and a $5 coffee in their hand complaining about, America.
Yeah.
Right?
I know, like, wow.
And
yeah,
so,
a $5 coffee every day in their hand. Yes.
Yes. And yet, they're able to do that here. They would not be able to do that in China.
No. Oh, no.
But again, I think that our message here, because we've talked about a lot and some people are able to put those pieces together and some aren't, but my takeaway for everybody here is if you're not in communication with your schools and you don't have a relationship with your schools and you don't feel your school has a cultural diversity philosophy, it might be time to bring that to their attention, especially if they have majority minority kids in their building. Does the principal seem to be making a movement towards hiring diverse staff? Is it, if we were to take a poll, it's mostly still white female teachers in most districts, not in mine, and it practically never. I don't think it ever has been. But then. Because we're dual language, because we're majority Hispanic overall, we've had that dual language program. Right. So I had the Spanish-speaking teachers, and for the most part, they tend to be Hispanic, although I've had African-American Spanish speakers in my bilingual program, and I've had Caucasian Spanish speakers like me in the bilingual program. But for the most part, they tend to be Hispanic. So those are the type of sort of more looking at your campus, looking at your district with a more culturally diverse eye to say, does my district seem to be working towards becoming more culturally diverse like our kids are? Because I just read something, I think yesterday, 70-some-odd% of our kids in Texas are majority minority kids. And so if that's the case and we're still only hiring white female teachers, then we're doing a disservice to our kids if they're not seeing somebody who looks like them to aspire to, right? And why should we do that? Well, because all the research says that if kids are coming from a non-college background, then the chances of them going to college are less than if they're coming from a college background. And so we have to jump through all sorts of hoops at Legacy to make sure that our majority minority kids who come from immigrant backgrounds or non-college backgrounds, many times with parents who have not finished high school, understand that our expectations is that they do go to college. Matter of fact, my Sunday show is going to have on a college and career counselor because it's March, and I'm gonna say something that it's just, Kathy, I continue to knock on the high school family door,
Right.
and 9 to 10, those parents do not know what endorsement their child is taking in high school. They do not know.
You asked me the other day. You asked me the other day about that, Dr. Goode, and I'm going to bust my own chops. Because my son goes to the academy, which is project-based learning STEAM school, and so I knew there was a specific endorsement that went with that, and that's what everybody has there because of the way the school is and everything. And so it's funny, just the other day when I was on doing a college readiness counseling session with his counselor, I said, you know what, I should know this. And I prefaced it with that. And she kind of laughed and she said, you don't know how many parents go, I should remember this from the freshman orientation. And I'm a former teacher, and this is my second kid to go through that same high school. So I would guarantee you most parents walk, or at least less than 50% know.
I know it. That's why I'm specifically asking her to talk about what to do if you're a junior or a senior. Now, does that mean the show's only for junior and senior parents? No.
No.
Frankly, if I am an elementary school parent and I'm listening to this college career readiness counselor talk about what's happening in 11th and 12th grade, I am making a huge mistake if I'm thinking, oh, good, I'm off the hook until 11th grade. Oh, no. Our motto at Legacy is preparing elementary school children for 9th grade college.
Yes.
And so what parents have to remember is that you all have an opportunity to start free college and high school for your kids if you can get them ready to pass the TSI in 8th grade. And so the schools will help that. Most schools will anyway, but you have to be an advocate for your child. And so
so much to talk about. Well, so then they can reach you. They can first of all, how can people follow you? And then what time do they need to tune in this weekend to grab your show?
The Facebook page is the Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page. It's 8:00 on Sundays, but you can watch it anytime. We rebroadcast it. If you will like us, you'll get notified. We rebroadcast the Sunday show at 6 p.m. on Thursday. Ask questions, even if we're not live at that time and you watch it later. Ask a question. I'll get notified. I'll answer it. But part of my work is not only trying to get parents who currently have kids in school to pay more attention to what's happening in school and not trust the schools so much, not from a negative standpoint, but because you will be so much more enriched by a relationship with your school.
Absolutely.
And through PTO, through the advisory committees, through the campus improvement plan parent piece, but also as an advocate for public education, even if you don't have kids, you never had kids, you still need to know what's happening in those schools because those kids are going to be what makes your future economy strong or not.
You better
strong.
believe it. It's going to keep those property values either high or tank them. You are investing in the future of the economic situation that you will inherit, kind of a thing. So I couldn't agree more.
Much like a teacher who has not been able to reach her students. A good teacher understands when the majority of her class fails a test, fails an assignment, that means that he or she did not teach it the way those kids needed to learn it.
You better
Okay?
believe it.
Huge takeaway. I obviously have not yet, after this many years, taught public ed advocacy and needing to have a relationship with your school in a way that more parents buy into it and more just laymen buy into my premise that you need to know about public education.
So true.
My job is not done quite yet.
No, it is not. Not anywhere near done. Well, we can't wait to see you on Sunday morning. Of course, you can catch last Sunday morning's rebroadcast tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. So thank you, Dr. Goode. We appreciate you. Of course, Dr. Goode of the Ask Dr. B. Goode show here on the JPK Broadcasting Network. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you Sunday.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Great information as always. And, there's so much to talk about. So much is ever changing with society, especially now with the pandemic. And so Dr. Goode is such a great resource. And in her show, it doesn't have we have no borders, because even if you're not in the state of Texas and you want to tune into a show where you can learn in your state how to advocate for your kid in education, Dr. Goode's show is the show for you. Now, if you are in Texas, you really want to be paying attention, because of course we only meet, our Texas legislators only meet for 6 months. Every other year they're meeting right now. So you got to make your voice be heard. I think we're going to talk a little March Madness. Do we have Fred on the line? Fred Nort, of course, the life coach of the crew, and he is helping out because I've not had a chance. My son had his wisdom teeth out yesterday, so say a prayer that pain subsides on that. But so I haven't followed, and I'm getting ready to find out as I pulled up and found out I'm still in last place or next to last place. We're going to find out from Fred what the latest is on March Madness with our brackets. Fred, how are you? Oh, check out the hat. That is fantastic. I love it.
I tell
love
you,
it.
It's a madness. I might as well put the British Bobby hat on to be mad.
I love it. Well, Fred, take it away. Update us on March Madness and how we're doing. I know I am, of course, in next to last place in our bracket, and I love the hat. I'm next to last place, and the only reason I'm not last place is because Charles Gura was so busy he couldn't even fill out his teams. So that's where I am. But of course, I picked Drexel to go to the Final Four because Drexel sounded like Drexler, which was one of my favorite ever pets name, a cat that I had. So take it away, Fred.
I don't even know what to say about this year. It's kind of a wacky system this year. And if you hear a doorbell in the background, my wife decided to install a dog bell, D-O-G bell, that they ring when they're outside. And he's out, like German Shepherds, one of the males outside ringing. If I'm not letting him in, I'm upstairs, he's downstairs.
Oh, I love it.
But it's crazy. It's a crazy year for this, because usually the way it works is the first four on Tuesday and Wednesday. So two games Wednesday start, and Thursday starts the Final Four. Starts the first round of 64, and it's Thursday. If you win Thursday, you play Saturday, and the next 16 games are on Friday, and you play Sunday.
Right.
So this year it got moved to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then it's the same pattern. It used to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks. All the time, but now this year, the Sweet 16 is starting on Saturday.
Right.
So you got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and then they go back to and then the Final Four is normally Saturday and Monday. So it's been a wacky year as it is. And I saw something the other day about this. Just the wackiness of everything is that it's the first time they've had 6 double-digit seeds get past the first round, and there were 5 different seeds for it. So it wasn't even like 2 12s. Every year 12 beats a 5. It just seems every single year 12 beats a 5. And this year, it didn't even happen this year. Oregon State beat Tennessee. Yeah, that's only 12 that 5 that won. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Georgetown one, which I picked. But hey, I picked Georgetown for 1 round. I'm sorry, Nathan. I know we messed him up. But
I was just say, anyway, we jacked his bracket up.
Yeah.
So
it's just,
yes, this has been a crazy season. You still don't know. It's one of those things, like, even if you feel like your team's looking really good and you're like, oh yeah, they're definitely going, as far as if one kid on that team gets COVID, everything
Yeah, they
changes.
shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
That's what happened to who was it?
Virginia.
Commonwealth,
Yeah.
VCU.
Yep. Yep.
Oregon didn't even have to play. They won the game technically 1-0.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because they didn't play.
Yeah.
You know, so that's gonna be down the road. People are gonna look at that and go, "What the heck happened? Well, 1-0. How'd you win the game 1-0?" And you know, think about 20 years from now, people look at this bracket. Because some people do look back that far. You know.
Yep.
It's crazy. I mean, and you know, like you had like Syracuse. They beat San Diego State, which was a 6 seed. Then they go on to beat the 3 seed WVU and West Virginia University, which actually was old Big East rivalry too. They played each other in the Big East days. You know, now they're on to Houston, and Houston only beat Rutgers by 3.
Right.
So you had 10 seed, you had 2 seed only beating 10 seed by 3 points, and then you have other teams that are blowing out people, and you had even like who was it? I don't know the score I put up here. Yeah, you had was UCLA.
Yeah, I'm trying. What? Yeah, I don't even know what the score was on that game.
Well, even like here's a Abilene Christian beats Texas by 1 point. The 3 seed, then they played 11 seed and they get blown out by 20.
See, and so like there's
you
kind of no rhyme or reason right now. That's what's so crazy.
I mean, you know, Oral Roberts, they won their game, and then they win the second game by 3 points. They beat the number 2 Ohio State.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Go figure. So when do they play? Because they play Arkansas next, right? Do they play Arkansas or have they played yet?
Oral Roberts plays Arkansas. I don't know the exact date. I know it's a Saturday, Sunday combination.
Okay.
I'm guessing since I'm looking at the brackets, if you actually looked at South and Midwest, played on Friday for the first round, and then Saturday was the West and East. So I'm guessing this Saturday, the Sweet 16 is going to be South and Midwest playing against. So you have the Baylor Villanova matchup, Arkansas Oral Roberts, Loyola Chicago Oregon State, which is a 12-8, which both lower seeds are gone in that one.
Right.
And then Syracuse Houston. So, you know, and then on Sunday you're probably gonna have Gonzaga Creighton, USC Oregon, Michigan FSU, Florida State, UCLA and Alabama. And actually the East bracket is the only one that kind of resembles close to what normally would be, because you got a 1, 4, and 2 that all made it through the Sweet 16.
Okay.
We have the 11 UCLA, which is kind of the curveball one. But that got curveball because Abilene Christian beat Texas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, where are you in the standings right now for JP, Kathy, and the crew?
Let me look. I didn't really look. I was gonna look today, but
it's not worth me even looking. I'm always just right above Charles Gura because he has no teams.
So,
while you're looking yours up, we have some great news with the Lady Baylor Bears. We've got the reigning women's champion Baylor in 12th consecutive Sweet 16. That's huge. Coach Mulkey, I mean, she's got an incredible program. Those women they're just phenomenal. So, gosh, I remember, it's probably been close to 10 years. We took the kids to see them in the Sweet 16 back at American Airlines Center, and just so fun to watch. So congratulations and go Lady Bears.
Yeah. And it's funny because 2 to 3 big tournaments are in Texas.
Yep.
You get the women's NCAA tournament that's in San Antonio.
Yep.
And the NIT tournament's right here in Frisco.
Oh, now wait, that is news to me. Are you serious?
Yeah, the NIT tournament, which is actually the oldest championship tournament out there. It's older than the NCAA 64 tournament.
I didn't even realize that.
At one of the couple centers here in Frisco.
How cool is that?
So if you really want to go to some teams that Georgetown may have knocked out, like Georgetown knocked out some team that's playing over there because that large big got lost when Georgetown won that championship.
Yep.
And a couple other teams that won the championship that probably shouldn't have. I think Oregon State was another one. They
there you
They
go.
took a couple out large bids that would have been playing this straight now that are in that tournament instead.
Well, okay, so where are you in the rankings? Did you look you up?
I'm actually 6th.
Okay.
I'm tied with that there Michelle. Well,
no, we love Michelle. She's the one who put the tournament together for us.
Well, the person in first place is I think it's a scam because it's the one who kind of created the tournament in JP. So
is he in first place?
Yeah, he's in first place. He has 31 correct. He has 80 points, 31 correct. Then you got Judd, Bobby Ward tied for second.
Yeah.
Then Nathan, who was first, is tied for fourth with a Joni Pickle.
Oh, Joni Pickle, yeah.
And then me and Michelle, Michael Wiseman at 6, then Gail, Susan at 9 with MB at 9, MB team, whoever that is. And then Cufford, who was first and loves his name being pronounced.
Right.
It's 12 with Heather. 14 Chambriel. I'm gonna say
Chambriel. Chambriel. Yeah, breathe the
Chambriel.
intern. Breathe the intern.
Yeah.
And then me rounding it at
there's Kathy,
last.
who cannot be the bottom, but she's there.
I know.
She's in it.
Good
Just
times.
think you can't finish last.
You know what? And that's the one good thing about Charles not filling out his brackets. Even when Michelle was like, "Hey, if he needs to fill these out since he's signed up, I can help him do it manually." And he's like, "Kathy, I'm so crazy busy." I mean, he had a project that rolled out at like 1 a.m. in the morning, an IT project the other day. So I get why he's busy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much that would be helping me at the end of the day. So, Fred, we really appreciate you coming on. And when are we going to get you doing your own podcast? You're the life coach. You've even got a title already.
I know. I'm doing. Well, yeah. Life coach Fred comes up on my, because I had that set up on my Zoom.
I know. I saw
so when
that.
all that comes up, because I do Zoom calls to people, it comes up that way. One of these days, I'm doing a little change of direction with the business, so I might be just going to podcasts and webinars only. So I'm doing a little change of direction with the business right now. So,
all right.
But
well, we love you and we appreciate you, so we'd love to have you on a show.
But just 2 seconds with it real quick. The top two for max points are Judd at 220 and John Payton at 218. So those guys have the best chance of winning it.
All right. Yeah. So, you know what? And something I don't think we did this year, because I think we were just so happy to have March Madness this year, because we've always done, you get a prize and you get this out of the air. I don't think we said what the prize, I love that hat. I don't think we said what the prize was going to be this year. And if JP wins, it doesn't count because he's the host of the show. A hug from me. Okay, I'm in.
Okay. And a root beer somewhere.
There you go. Okay, I like that. Well, Fred, thank you. We love you. And, of course, thank you so much for your service as being a member of the Blue. And, we were saying earlier on the show that we were, praying for the folks in Colorado, because the first officer on the scene was unfortunately, father of 7. I think he was like 51, very young. So just heartbreaking. When we're running away from danger, people like yourselves are running towards danger. So we appreciate you for what you've done for the country and what you bring to the crew. And thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks. Have a great day now.
All right. Love you, my friend. Bye-bye. All right. Great stuff from Fred. I love the crew. I pinged Fred last night. I'm like, hey, I haven't even been following the games the last couple of days. Can you help me out and come on the show and report about March Madness? He's like, yep, I'm right there with you. So that's always awesome. Of course, another member of the crew, somebody who we have on a regular basis on the show. And it seems like there's more and more and more ever since the pandemic to report from your point of view, and that's Laythan Watts here with First Liberty, and he'll let you know about how to donate, how to get in touch with them, how to follow them. But First Liberty stands up for religious freedom, and it's interesting. Laythan and I always talk about this. Even if you don't believe, if you're atheist or agnostic or whatever the case may be. What was the other one? The secular humanism or something. Anyways, there's all these different. Every day I look, there's another label out there. It's not. This isn't just an organization that protects the rights of Christians. So I think a lot of people assume that because so many of the people in your fine organization are very devout Christians and very out loud and proud about it, which is great. If you're Jewish, if you're, Hindu, whatever the case may be, Sikh, whatever your religious preference is, y'all are out there fighting and protecting it. And during the pandemic, boy, Laythan, we've needed it more than ever, So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks
You're
for having
welcome.
me back.
You bet.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we will defend any faith anywhere in America, anywhere someone is just simply trying to live according to what they believe. In a way that is in keeping with the law and the Constitution. Yes. We'll defend your right to do so.
Absolutely.
And, we have quite a few Orthodox Jewish clients right now. We have represented probably every denomination of Christianity you can think of, and maybe a couple that you can't.
Yeah.
Buddhists, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, you name it. We have probably defended it. We had a case protecting a Native American sweat lodge that was before I got to First Liberty. But
so what is that?
There
you go.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what
you
call that religion, but they got a right to practice it, so we defended them. And that's what the First Amendment's all about. That's why it's the only type of case that we take. And you, to your point earlier, even if you're not particularly religious or don't come from a particular faith background, you should still care about the types of cases that we're involved in, because ultimately what it really boils down to is your right to live according to what you believe. And so even people who aren't religious, they still likely have some set of ideas that they want to live their life by.
Right.
And that's what that's what Jefferson called religious liberty the right of conscience.
Yes.
And that's really what it boils down to. That our government was sort of founded on the idea that no one should be put in the position of having to choose between obeying God and obeying the law.
Yes.
Or obeying, their own conscience and obeying the law. And so that's what really is the heart of every issue that we litigate.
It is. And then that's why, again, and I say this every time you're on, but it's just very important that you preserve religious freedom, because if not, if you take that away, then there might be a mandate passed down somewhere down the road that says everybody in America, don't care where you come from, don't care what your belief is, has to be ABC religion.
Yeah, that's what the establishment.
That?
Right, that's what the Establishment Clause. There's two clauses in the First Amendment: Congress make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And that's what the Establishment Clause is all about, is that the founders did not want there to be an official church of the United States of America. They had just won a war with England that had the Church of England.
Kind of moved away from
and
that.
They wanted to get away from that.
Yeah.
And so they did not. Their intent was that there would not be an official state church of the United States of America.
Right.
Now, the Constitution, as originally written, only bound the federal government. That's why it says Congress can make no law.
Right.
At the time it was adopted, all 13 states at that time had official state churches. Some of them even had religious tests for office, which the Constitution forbids for federal office.
Right.
It was only until really right after the Civil War and the incorporation doctrine, they started applying the Bill of Rights to the states, that the states jettisoned those. And at that point, basically, the Constitution becomes a floor, not a ceiling. So your state can enact more protection than the Constitution. It just can't provide less.
Yes.
And so that's how it's been applied to the states ever since. But that's really, the Establishment Clause is really pretty simple.
Right.
It takes lawyers and judges to complicate the simple. And they've done a really good job of it.
That tends to happen.
Over many years. So,
unfortunately.
So that area of our practice really usually comes into play when you're talking about things like, can a state legislature open the session with an invocation?
Right.
The sort of living document folks who say the Constitution's constantly evolving, it can mean something different than it did in 1789, would say, well, that's somehow an endorsement of religion and you can't do that.
Right.
Whereas the textualist, the originalist interpretation of the Constitution says, it says what it means what it says. If there's any question, you go back to the meaning at the time it was written. And at the time it was written, so when the Constitutional Convention met and they drafted the Constitution and eventually the Bill of Rights, they opened that session with an invocation.
Right.
So why does anybody think they said a prayer, asked God for guidance, and then set about writing a First Amendment that would make what they just did illegal?
Right. Yeah. Doesn't make too much sense, Right.
So a lot of our Establishment Clause work deals with things like that.
Right.
Or say, like, if your legislature or your state capital wants to put a Ten Commandments monument on the grounds to sort of commemorate the moral foundation of law, to remind legislators of the moral foundation of law in this country, and that being one of the oldest written moral codes in the world.
Yes.
Yes, you can do that. And then the Free Exercise Clause, which is where I would say more of our litigation comes in, and because that's really where the rubber meets the road in daily life of how you are allowed to live your life according to what you believe.
Right, exactly. Well, it's one of those things, are you going to still be allowed to say a prayer at a restaurant as a family or as an individual by yourself. You know, if we wanted to pray on this show, are we allowed to say, you know, Dr. Goode and I opened up the show today asking for prayers, asking the crew to come together and pray for the victims and the families of the shooting. You know, I mean, this is such things. If you start to take something for granted, tell you what, more and more I'm seeing, it gets taken away from you. It's like you've always got to fight for that ability, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's why our work, our cases are so important, because, I mean, religious liberty is the first one in the First Amendment, and I think it's there for a reason, because, as you mentioned before, if you allow government into that space between man and God, or man and his own conscience, and can force a man to violate his own conscience, then there is literally no limit to what government can do. If they can do that, they can do anything. So just pick whatever your favorite of the rest of the Bill of Rights. If you lose that one, or even the rest of the ones in the First Amendment, exactly.
Yeah, you start going down. You're right. You're right. If you pick and choose, okay, well, in the Bill of Rights, okay, I'm good. I'm real good with this. I'm real good with this. The others, not so much. Well, the ones you're good with eventually are going to be under fire as well.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of time. And we're going to, when Senator Paxton comes on, we'll pause and we'll interview her, and then we'll come back. But let's go ahead and start updating. If you can update us on some of the key cases y'all have got going on. There's,
probably
one we've been following.
The one that most people
have
probably heard the most about is Coach Joe Kennedy, football coach in Bremerton, Washington, that was fired for taking a knee after football games in prayer at the 50-yard line in the middle of the field. And that case has been going on for close to 6 years now. Went all the way to the Supreme Court, all the way back down to the district court, and then back up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And just about 2 months ago, we re-argued it again at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And they just issued their opinion, I think just a couple of weeks ago, ruling against Coach Kennedy again, which was, disappointing but not surprising.
And when you came on the show the last time and discussed it, it was one of those things you're like, just, we're optimistic but unfortunately prepare for possibly the worst.
Right.
With that particular court.
Yeah. So they ruled against him again, and so that leaves us with two options. When you argue in front of a Court of Appeals, you get a 3-judge panel of that court. You don't sit in front of the entire court. So once that panel rules against you, you have the option of an en banc appeal, which is basically asking for the entire court to sit and hear the case again. So we could file an appeal en banc, or we could just go directly to the Supreme Court.
Right. And as a matter of fact, so stay tuned for this discussion as far as what they're going to do at First Liberty to help Coach Joe, because we've got Senator Angela Paxton live with us from Austin, Texas for the Senate Minute here on JP, Kathy, and the crew. Good morning, Senator.
Morning. Let's see.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing well, and we're super excited. We know, it's getting down to crunch time here. Of course, we just talked about March Madness, and you've got your Baylor pennant up behind you. I love that. And we're noticing you've got your Baylor pennant right behind you.
Absolutely. I am a proud graduate of Baylor University myself, and the women are killing it.
Love it. We love it. Well, update us. Give us a Senate Minute. Lots to talk about. So what all is going on in Austin?
Well, there is a lot to talk about. I guess, I down to the border to see what was going on with these youth influx centers. And so that was informative, disconcerting, all sorts of things. So that was number one. Number two, the other thing that happened was that a group of Democrats tagged all of the election integrity bills in the First Committee that were going to be heard on Monday, which procedural move that I have not yet seen. No one's pulled that. it's kind of the committee version of filibustering. And
Okay.
basically, it shut down the hearing for the day. So all people who had traveled to the state capitol planning to testify that day, taken off work, made arrangements for their children, etc., all had to go home.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's interesting to note that basically this was on the top of election integrity. I think at the very least we can see that as kind of a shot across the bow
Yes.
from the other party, which is, you would think we would all want fair elections. And then I guess the third thing that I would highlight is that we've got a very, very busy week in committees. This week we're listening and watching this morning. So that next week on the Senate floor, it's going to be very busy and I think pretty exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of pro-life legislation, to see probably my religious freedom bill to protect churches from closure by executive order. We are going to see probably some integrity. The one thing that we're required to pass, the one thing we have to do during session, which is pass a budget.
Yes.
And so that will be most likely as well. So lots going on.
Well, and Senator, you were cutting in and out a little bit. Let's talk. First of all, I don't know if you had a chance to catch Point of View radio show. Kirby Anderson and I was guest co-hosting with him on Monday. We were singing your praises on your pro-life legislation. Since we've got Laythan Watts from First Liberty here, let's talk about your religious freedom bill that you've got that you said will be voted on next week. You believe?
I believe so. We passed committee last week. It was one of the first bills to be heard in state affairs, so I was proud about that. I think it shows the that Texans have expressed to make sure it's very clear with to gather together for worship.
Oh, Senator, can you repeat what you just said? You're cutting in and out on us. I think we've got a bad connection at the Capitol, but if you can repeat that, because I think that's really important. I know where you were going with that.
Yes, I think that it was the closing churches by executive order, and I think it's very important. It was shown. The very first bills we heard in committee, and it is one of the first round of bills that we're going to, and I think that demonstrates the priority that is being acknowledged from leadership here, heard from Texans all over the state.
Excellent. What else? And I know you've got committee meetings this morning, and then also let's do an update for education as far as, is there any major legislation that the crew needs to know about and needs to support you in those efforts?
Well, first of all, let me say that everyone can follow the legislation that is moving through the House and the Senate, through committee and the floor, by going to the www. Online. You can follow things by author, by bill number, etc. So that's something I would encourage everyone to do so that you can follow legislation that matters to you. But, what I would do is I would just encourage people to email, call their representatives and their senators, and just encourage them to support this legislation.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing with the crew. We're always saying, and I'm going to put the Texas Legislature online on our social media feeds today. If there's an area that you're passionate about, it's so easy to follow bills, to follow the authors, to follow topics. It's super easy. I suggest that you do that. You get alerts, and that way you know when to reach out to your state representative, your state senator, the head of the committee, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker of the House, whoever it may be that you need to get your information out to. Do we have you back on, Senator?
I think we're kind of cutting in and out.
We are a little bit. Sorry about that.
Me too.
Oh.
The goal is like a bunker, you know. I mean, it's this beautiful granite, but it's not very friendly to cell signal.
Yeah. It is protective. Yeah, we're gonna have you like live outside of the Senate to get a better cell signal.
You know what? Maybe we'll try that.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's show it off.
All right. Well, and how can people follow you, Senator?
My website is angelapaxton.com. Then on social media, Angela Paxton TX. And, I would love for you to go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter. We do a weekly by email every week. We're building out a texting.
And I'm going to
in that way.
And I'm putting all of the ways people can follow you. I received that newsletter, and it's great information. Again, if I'm super busy and I don't have time to read much else, I can go there and I can get highlights about what's going on. And again, it's all about. And Senator, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you and with Laythan here. It's all about being informed, so you can let your voice be heard. The Texas legislature only meets for 6 months every other year. So, which, in my mind, that's a good thing, because we've got to really focus on those 6 months that we're in session. So it's important that you stay informed during this 6-month time period so you can let your voice be heard.
Well, it moves really fast. And it actually, you mentioned 140 days. We're on day. So we're on day 72. We don't have, we're more than halfway through now.
Wow.
And a lot has to happen. So we have to prioritize. And it is a very fast moving process. It is built to be efficient and transparent. And so there's still bills heard in committee in the House and the Senate that you can come down and testify on.
Are there any opportunities to do Zoom, like if you want to testify via Zoom, or fill out something online, just if you want to say you're for or against something?
The only committee that was taking testimony was redistricting, because it's not a standing committee, so the rules don't allow for that in the standing committees. However, always submit written testimony. And we go through all of that. We review all of the testimony to see, the number for and the number of that you think might be helpful, and maybe you're not for or against it, but it's just something you want to let people know about.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Senator. Yeah, let's try outside of the Capitol next week, and that way we've got a more fluid tie-in with you. But thank you so much. We appreciate you always, every week taking time out of your busy schedule to be on JP, Kathy, and the crew, and keep people, especially back here in Senate District 8, informed as far as what is going on, how they can get in touch with you. So God bless you, and we wish you the best this week. And thank you so much for all the good work you do.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to represent you all down here, to listen, learn, and lead, and make a difference for Senate District 8, but also for the state of Texas. For now and for the next week, we'll do this, and we'll get some vitamin D at the same time.
Sounds great. Thanks, Senator. We'll see you then. Okay. All right. Texas State Senator Angela Paxton, really fighting the good fight for us. And if you want to know what's going on in the state of Texas, she serves on some very prominent and very, very important and crucial committees. And it's one of those things. Get her newsletter. It sounds like they're going to have a text message alert system that comes up, which this is all fantastic. Get on Texas Legislature online, sign up for the bills you want to follow, sign up for the topics. If you're big on the Second Amendment, okay, then anything that has to do with guns, gun law, for or against, again, we've got members of the crew who are conservative and who are more liberal. So, get on there and follow legislation. And I'm telling you, especially with everybody working from home now, you've got 5 minutes in your day where you can email and, email, text, or make a phone call to that office. And I know from my days as county commissioner, I would say I've had 432 phone calls and or emails in favor of this. I've had 2 against. So that is telling me that my constituents are overwhelmingly in favor or against, or whatever the case may be. They use those numbers in Austin.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's important stuff. And let's talk about this, because you guys argue, and I want to go back and get it updated on the coach's case. But you guys fight for stuff in the individual states or cities or wherever, but it's for the federal. This is an American thing with you.
Yeah,
does that make sense? So how does that work with state law versus federal laws?
So here's a lawyer's answer. It depends, right?
Oh, there you go. The world according to Watts.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, depending on the facts of the case and which level of government is involved,
Right.
that can kind of determine what court system you go through. Like our case in Oregon, Aaron and Melissa Klein, who the state government bankrupted their business because they
Yes.
referred a same-sex couple to another
Yep.
baker for a wedding cake.
Right.
Well, that was the State Bureau of Labor and Industry in Oregon
Okay.
that did that. So we went through the state courts.
Okay.
And we went up to the state Supreme Court. They ruled against the Kleins. But even if you're dealing with the state, if it impacts something that is a constitutional right,
Yes.
then you can appeal that. We went to the Supreme Court after the
Okay.
state Supreme Court ruled against them. We asked the U.S. Supreme Court to vacate that court's decision, and they did. It's called grant, vacate, remand. Grant means technically they took the case.
Right.
Vacate, which means it basically just erased the lower court's decision, and
Okay.
remand, sent it back to that court. So it's basically like the U.S. Supreme Court saying, hey, you want to try this again?
Right.
And
Yeah.
by the way, here's our decision in the Masterpiece
Here's
Cake Shop case,
Here's what we're thinking.
which
Yeah,
was
exactly.
almost identical facts to yours, and we've already
Right.
ruled on this. And how did you not read this case when you were deciding this one?
Right.
Um,
And
so
that's where, and JP and I've talked about this before, and I think we've discussed this with you. If you want to be a legislator, then, do like Senator Paxton did. Go run for
Right.
state Senate, run for state rep, whatever the case may be, run for United States Congress, and make laws,
Right.
legislate.
yeah,
If you are a judge, that is not your job.
no, your job is not to make policy.
I mean, it's real clear.
Yep.
But more and more, you see these folks who are liberal leaning legislating from the bench, and that's really scary, because that means they can make a decision. I'm like, okay, if you're in a district court and you're going through a divorce, and let's say that a judge doesn't care for your lawyer, or just for whatever reason they get it in their mind that they're going to make an example of you. Do you want that happening when it determines if you're going to get to see your kid on Christmas or not?
Right.
So it's it's a slippery slope. If you're like, well, but that's okay in this situation because I got what I wanted. There's going to come a day when it's not going to go the way you wanted.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you think of some of our cases that are going on right now, a lot of them deal with traditional religious views across a lot of religions,
Right.
but traditional religious views on marriage, sexuality, gender, all of these things that are culturally unpopular right now. Well, what belief of yours is okay right now,
Right.
but might become culturally unpopular a year from now,
Yeah.
5 years from now,
Right.
10 years from now? It's the unpopular idea that needs the most protection.
Got that right. Yep.
And this is why the founders were extremely suspicious of democracy,
Right.
because a majority can decide something they don't like the minority viewpoint on
Right.
this, and we're just going to outlaw it.
Right.
Well, that's why we're not a pure democracy.
Right.
We're a republic.
Right.
And in a republic, the way ours is set up, you have policy-making branches, legislature and the executive, and you have the judicial branch, which is not intended to be a policy-making branch.
No.
But over time, many policy decisions, especially on sort of controversial issues, folks that could not get what they wanted through the legislative process find a way to get that issue in front of a judge, and that judge not doing the judge's
Right.
job of saying whether something is constitutional or not, but
Right.
maybe just likes the policy outcome, rules in favor, and that then, is basically the law. But this is, I have sort of, I'm an equal opportunity offender when it comes to legislators on this, because you're right in that it is, it has been more of the left side on social issues that has accomplished this through the courts.
Right.
But frankly, there are a lot of conservatives who are just as happy to have the court make that decision, because that means they don't have to take a tough vote and a controversial vote.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a really good point. Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but I can tell you when the Bostick opinion came out of the Supreme Court, where they basically rewrote the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, there were so-called conservative Republicans who didn't really say much about it, who had, and you could tell.
So it was one of those things. Silence kind of sometimes says more than
well,
than
hey,
speaking.
at least now I don't have to vote on this.
Yep.
Because, Supreme Court's spoken, so I guess there's nothing we can do about it, which is nonsense.
Right.
Because if the Supreme Court, and this is here again, the world according to Watts, when the Supreme Court
hat is off right now.
when the Supreme Court rewrites a law the way they did in that decision, there is something Congress can do about it. They can go back and amend the law.
Absolutely.
Which is why that decision was such a ridiculous fiasco, because Congress had attempted to rewrite that law several times and could not get the votes to do it. So how then can the Supreme Court look at that and go, well, their intent in the language of this was to include this in the definition of sex? If the R's in Congress were really that upset about it, then they would have gone to the floor and they would have amended the Civil Rights Act and said, this is not what we intended, and here's what we intended.
Here's
not
what we
one
wanted.
of them.
Right.
Not one of them.
Stood up, yeah.
Even tried. Now, look, they're not in the majority. I get that. They don't control the rules, but not one of them even mentioned the possibility.
And it's interesting, you don't have to be in the majority to still stand up and speak what we, the people back in your district, are wanting you to speak. Sometimes making a statement and literally getting those arrows shot at you, at least the people who elected you to represent them feel like, you know what, knew we weren't going to have the votes, but at least my congressman spoke on behalf of what we were telling him.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's the gig.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, we don't elect a proxy vote. This is not a pure democracy where they just call home and go, how many people voted for how many?
Yeah,
okay, all right, then I guess that's my vote.
Yeah.
You're electing somebody to make decisions on your behalf.
And sometimes it's not popular. And sometimes you're going to get beat up. And guess what? That's part of the gig.
Which is why when you're choosing those people, it's really more important that you understand what their principles are and how they make decisions.
Right.
Because just like Senator Paxton was talking about, how quickly things move in Austin at a state level, again, it's not a proxy vote. No. They don't have time to call home to the district office and go, well, SB 26 is on the floor. How many votes are for it? How many votes are against it? I guess that's what I do.
What's the poll out there? Which way is the wind blowing kind of a
exactly.
thing?
You want that person. You want to know what their decision-making process is, what principles they evaluate things on, and if they line up with yours, that's probably the person that you should vote for. And it's probably not going to line up with you 100% of the time, but if the core principles they believe in, if how they evaluate something matches, your philosophy on government, that's the person you want making decisions on your behalf.
And it's interesting, and again, this is with your First Liberty hat off. I think more people are going to be paying attention during the primaries, for what will be the 2022 election season, than ever. Usually the primaries, very few turn out. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. Most people are like, oh, well, who's the Republican? Well, or who's the Democrat? Well, guess what? You get a choice in our case in Texas in March. I hear more people talking about that, not just my friends in Texas or in North Texas specifically. Friends around the country are like, I'm paying attention this time. I've already got a horse in the race this time, and it's not the person who I voted for last November. Right. And this is something that, again, we the people do, because thank God the founding fathers, what they put into place with the Constitution, we still have that opportunity for our voice to be heard. So, but you've got to exercise it. And before we wrap up, I want to hear what happens with coach's case. And and this is what you said, 6 years it's been going on.
Close to 6 years now. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to, and I say this every time you're on, but I think it's really worth noting, especially since, on Wednesdays we have Dr. Goode on our show talking about public education. I just think of all the kids, all the young men in particular, which, boy, if there was ever a time for men to step up and lead young men and help turn them into men, fully functioning, productive, confident men, it's now. And I think of 6 years worth of this individual not being able to lead and turn young men into men. That's heartbreaking.
It is. That's why he went into coaching.
Gosh, that's heartbreaking.
He
truly loved it and wanted to make a difference.
Exactly. He would tell you. I mean, he retired from the Marine Corps, spent 20 years in the Marines, got out, and he would tell you he had a rough childhood. He wasn't a good kid, and Marines cured him of that.
I was going to say, he turned his life around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he wanted to help kids who were, coming from similar backgrounds than he did. When he took the job, he didn't know really much of anything about football.
He wasn't a big X and O kind of guy or anything. He was
That's what they wanted him to do.
Yes.
Was to help build the character of the guys on the team. And so you're right. Ultimately, in his case and in a lot of our cases, it is the least of these that get hurt the most.
Right.
Like you said, it's the kid who doesn't have a dad who Coach Kennedy could have helped along.
And who might have
really
been
suffers because of that.
And instead of being in jail now because of drugs or gang related instances, that might have been a productive person in society.
Right.
That's heartbreaking, because if you start, if you take, and again, he wasn't. And if you haven't had a chance to read up on this case, you can give them information on where to go for that. He wasn't asking these young football players, young men, to come out on the field and pray with him. It's just a promise he had made as an individual, which I think we still have that right to do in this country. At least I hope we do, to go out and tell God, thank you so much. Right. Give credit where credit is due, if you will. He wasn't forcing anybody else to join him, and so you lose this leader for 6 years. That's a lot of generations, a lot of future generations, future kids and generations that lives he could have touched.
Right, and some of his players came to him and asked if they could join him, and he literally told them it's a free country, you can do what you want.
Which isn't it?
In theory,
yeah.
But this gets to I won't get too down in the legal weeds here, but where do we go now? So we had to argue his case as a free speech issue because of an old Supreme Court decision called Employment Division versus Smith, which really lowered the bar of scrutiny by the Supreme Court on matters that impact the free exercise clause, and it had basically made the free exercise clause dormant. I mean, it just made it the bar was so low that the government had to get over in order to win.
Right.
That it was just almost impossible to win a free exercise case. So we brought it as a free speech case. And when we went to the Supreme Court the first time and they didn't take the case, they issued a little opinion, basically an explanation as to why they didn't do it, and which is very, very rare. And 4 justices signed it. It was written by Alito, signed by Gorsuch, Thomas, and Kavanaugh.
Okay.
That's important because if 4 justices vote to take a case, it goes on the granted list.
Yes.
So you got 4 names on this little opinion, and I won't get all the way into the weeds on it, but one of the things it mentioned right toward the end was, hey, and I'm paraphrasing here because this is written in legalese. When the petitioner brought this as a free speech claim, when he clearly has a free exercise claim, perhaps that's because of previous decisions by this court, which we have not yet been asked to review.
Right.
And that's Justice Alito doing everything but including an eye wink emoji, saying, you know what?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
we know that Employment Division versus Smith has been bad, and we would like a chance to take another look at it. So eventually we will appeal Coach's case back to the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't know if the decision's been made yet on whether or not to ask for an en banc review by the Ninth Circuit first or just to go directly to the Supreme Court. But when we do, we will include, as part of that petition to the Supreme Court, you need to overturn Employment Division versus
Right.
Smith and get back to the original intent of the free exercise clause and raise that level of judicial scrutiny
Right.
on free exercise cases so that the free exercise clause actually means something again. And that would be an absolutely monumental shift in the court's analysis of these things,
Right.
to where really you could say you would have more religious freedom in this country than you've had in probably 30, 40 years, because that Smith decision is that old. So
Golly.
this is why Coach Kennedy continues
To fight
to
the good
fight
fight.
this, because he understands at this point, yes, we want to win for him.
It's
But
bigger
it's
than him
much
at this
bigger
point.
than him at this point.
Yeah.
If you win for him, even just on the merits of his case,
Yes.
then you have now protected
my
public
goodness.
employees all over the country.
Absolutely.
Not just schools, anybody who works in any
Absolutely.
level of government.
Yeah.
But if you win that and the Supreme Court reverses Smith, you have created more religious liberty for everybody. And
Which we're, again, at the end of the day, even if you're anti-religion, okay, well then that right needs to be protected, and this and more religious liberty helps protect that in the end.
right. And
And I think that's what I wish that these liberal judges who legislate from the bench would realize.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're hurting yourself down the road.
Yeah, and really with the whole kind of living document interpretation of the Constitution, it's wrong on many levels, but one of the fundamental aspects of it that is wrong is that, well, if it's just subject to interpretation all the time, then you're no longer ruled by law.
No.
You're ruled by men.
And men are flawed.
Exactly.
Men and women are flawed, because I know somebody's going to be chops busting.
I'm talking about men in the generic
Yes.
sense. Like all men are
Wait,
created
what about
equal.
herstory? Come
Right.
on, Lathan.
Yeah, you want to know one of my biggest problems with this whole cancel culture nonsense is that it is butchering the English language.
Oh my goodness, it is.
And as a writer, I take that personally.
Yes, I'm taking offense to that. So you need to be the writer category, and you need to be out there
Yeah.
doing your own cancel culture.
But yeah, so yes, eventually, this may be the vehicle that to overturn a really
Right.
bad decision. And to our point earlier about how if Congress doesn't like something the courts do, they actually do have
Yep.
a way of remedying it. When that case was decided, Employment Division versus Smith, Congress did take action.
Yep.
They passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Right.
You want to know why we have that at the federal level?
Why is that?
It's because of that decision, that Employment Division versus
Wow.
Smith, because one of the things that it did, I won't get into too much of the legalese, but it lowered the level of scrutiny by
Right.
the court on these things. And so what RFRA did was raise the level of scrutiny back and
Right.
say government action that impacts religious freedom has to be narrowly tailored. It has to be the least restrictive means
Okay.
available, and they have to have a compelling interest to do what they're doing anyway.
Right.
So, and you want to know how far we've come in this country. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was championed in the House by then Congressman Chuck Schumer,
Right.
championed in the Senate by Ted Kennedy, and signed into law by Bill Clinton, and passed nearly unanimously.
Wow.
Now you have legislation pending, the Equality Act, that would essentially erase
all
the
of
Religious
that.
Freedom Restoration Act.
And so you go back and you're like, okay, so you're talking all Democrats, and this is kind of some of the same issues. And I know we're 1 minute away from finishing, so we need 5 more hours. Well, it's like the stuff with the border right now. Okay, it was okay. It wasn't okay during the Obama administration to let 1,000 immigrants over, but now we've got 6,000 kids coming over during a pandemic, and it's like, oh, it's all good. It's that hypocrisy. So, maybe some of these people who are out there pushing cancel culture and pushing, this coach, he can't pray, and what's that all about? Well, maybe you need to go back and check your own history.
Yeah, absolutely. And what, and again, like I said before, what idea of yours is culturally okay today might not be 6 months from now.
Exactly.
That's
so,
why
yeah,
you should stand up for the
you
people
better
who have
believe it.
culturally unpopular views right now.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, how do people get in touch with you?
First
Liberty,
Liberty,
how do they donate?
Yeah, firstliberty.org. If you need our help, there's a Get Legal Help button
Yep.
at the top of the page, and right next to it is the Donate button. We appreciate that. That allows us to never bill the client. So if you do
Which is
become a client of
phenomenal,
ours,
because
You never get a bill for the services.
unless some of these, I mean, well, okay, let's Coach's case. How much would that have cost him at this point?
Oh, I mean, by now, easily 7 figures.
Yeah, and so who can afford that?
Right.
Who of we the people can really truly afford that? So you guys do such good work. Even if it's $25, it's $2,500. They're not going to turn it down. So we really appreciate it. And Laythan, thank you so much for coming on. As
Anytime.
always, we love you being a part of the crew, and love to the crew. Big show Friday. Lots of folks coming on. What else do we have? We've got. What show? Oh, we've got Dr. Goode's show coming again. We've got the lawyer show tomorrow. We've got This Pink Cloud. And you'll want to tune into This Pink Cloud after our show on Friday, because just on Monday night, or Monday afternoon into Monday night, we had a Nightline, ABC Nightline production crew out here, and they're going to be highlighting This Pink Cloud and their guest that was on Monday and a future ABC Nightline. So very, very excited about that. So anyways, have a blessed rest of the day, and we'll see y'all on Friday. Thanks.